And we are live. All right, I'm excited that everyone is here, both in person and virtually, as we are getting ready to celebrate Shabbat together. Just a little reminder that I'm getting ready to share my screen with everybody so that everyone should have the service in front of them. And if you're in the sanctuary and would like to use a prayer book, I have the page numbers that I'll announce so that we can follow along in whichever way is easiest for everybody. Also, as we begin, I want to acknowledge that I'll be asking people to sit or stand throughout the service as our tradition tells us, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that when I say please rise or please be seated, that I mean we are rising together either in body or in spirit as we are able to do. So I hope that everyone is able, as we are joining together this evening, to find a little bit of Shabbat peace as we get started on page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We'll continue on page 128 as we join together singing Hine Matov, how good it is for all of us to be together. Hine Matov u'manayim shel terafim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shel terafim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim. Oy 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 shel terafim gam yachad. Shel terafim oy yachim gam yachad. Continue on page 130 as we join together in the words of Psalm 95 and 96. Lechun Eranana, giving thanks to God for all of God's creation.
Yeah.
continue on page 138 as we join together in singing Lechado D. We'll join together in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 in our prayer books. And as we reach the final verse, we'll rise to face our entryway to welcome Shabbat like a bride or a queen. There we go. Oh, wrong music. Ya la 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 Lechado Di. Ya la 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 Elikat Kala. Ya la 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 B'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat Nekabela. Shamor v'zachor. V'dibur echad. We'll continue with Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the ministering angels, the angels of peace, to bring us our sense of Shabbat rest and peace. Shalom Alechem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rochem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aruni L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll continue on page 120 as we prepare to kindle our Shabbat candles. If there's anyone at home who has their candles and would like to join in, now is the time to get them ready. Page 120. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who had kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kilshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We'll continue on page 144 as we transition into the Shema and her blessings. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, ub'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, Bagala, ubizman kariv, v'imeru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, le'alam u'lam me'almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'itadar, v'itale, v'talal, shemei de kedusha brichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, tamiran be'alma, v'imeru, amen. We'll rise for the call to prayer, our Baruch Hu, on page 146. Continue on page 148. As I forgot to put the right music. Oh, bother. Here we go. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreo, Belayla, Golelor mipnei choshech, Golelor mipnei choshech, Bechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreyon, Belayla, Golelor mipnei choshech, Golelor mipnei choshech, Bechoshech mipnei or. Continue on page 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll rise for Shema on page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Please be seated. We'll continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hodseiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. On page 157 at the top, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Continue with Mi Chamocha on page 158. We continue on the top of page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporez sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. continue on page 164, and then continue on even-numbered pages following that with our tefillah, as I invite everyone to please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agit tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Velohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Continue at the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat. On the top of page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for our awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lehodot. Continue with our prayer for peace. Shalom Rav on page 178. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Chasim leolam, Chasim leolam. We'll take a moment for our own quiet prayers. Hiyu leratzon imrei fi v'hegyo libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai We devote the next few moments of our service to those who are in need of a prayer of healing, to our Misha Berach prayer. If there are people in your lives who you're holding in your hearts who are in need of a prayer of healing, and you'd like to mention their names in the chat, I will read their names out loud in a second. And as I look around the sanctuary, if you have someone you'd like to add their name for our prayer of healing, please say their name as I look your way. Esther Greenwald, Ursula Hartunian, Julie Benzino, Steve Gold, Nita Freilich, Miles Hoffman, Mitch Wolin, John Williams, Tom Kornfeld, Charlie Guberman. And for all of our loved ones we hold in our hearts for a prayer of healing, we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim, Blessed is God who brings healing to those who are in need of a prayer of healing. We'll continue on page 371 as we sing Mi Sheberach. Mi Sheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi Sheberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I wish there was a way to get like a better picture so that everyone who's in the sanctuary can see the people on Zoom, but you guys can't see the people in the sanctuary very well. That's a problem that we can solve later. It's just something that I'm thinking of, though. This Shabbat, we have one of my favorite Torah portions. We have the Torah portion called Shalach Lecha, which means to send forward, and it contains in the beginning the story of the spies, the 12 spies, the leaders of each of the 12 tribes of Israel who enter into the land of Israel as on a scouting tour. And it's really, it's interesting for so many reasons. One of the reasons is, when these spies are walking through the land, the things that the Torah describes that they found are kind of miraculous. They say that the people were giants, and even the food that they encountered, the grapes, we still in Israel today use a picture of one of these scenes described in the Torah, of this week's Torah portion, on the coins in Israel, where you see two fully grown men carrying a stick, and in between them are a giant bunch of grapes. It's really an interesting piece, and we also know that when these spies return to the rest of the camp, and they go before the people and give their report, we know, we've all have heard that there were two of these spies who came back with an interesting report that the land was beautiful and that they spoke out in favor of moving forward. And the other 10 said, we're terrified. The people are too great. We think the land is great, but we just don't know what we're going to do about the people who are there. Those giants, they're too much for us. What is interesting about what I just told you is that it's not true. Or at least the last part, where there are two spies. We often think of Caleb and Joshua as being the two who spoke out in favor of entering the land, when in reality, the Torah actually does something tricky. The Torah has two separate versions of this story. One of them in this week's Torah portion in chapter 13 of the book of Numbers, and the other in chapter 14. And in the first version of this story, the only person who speaks up is Caleb. And then later, in chapter 14, we hear a slightly different version of the story. Biblical scholars say that this version of the story must have been told from the perspective of Joshua, because Joshua puts himself into the camp of people who spoke out against, or who spoke out in favor of entering the land and against the people who were dissenting. So I found this interesting commentary from Rabbi Judith Hauptmann, who is a professor emerita at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and she points out that one of the, in rabbinic tradition, there is an ancient text called the Tosefta, which is about 1,800 years old. It was formed at the same time as the Mishnah, the earliest section of the Talmud, was formed. And when you read this section of the Tosefta, it rewords our chapter 13, the story that's supposed to be the story of Caleb, and it says, "We came to the land that you sent us to." That was what Joshua said. This is what the Tosefta says. "We came to the land you sent us to," said Joshua. "Caleb said, 'Let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it.' The scouts said, however, 'The people who inhabit this country are too powerful.'" And the Tosefta then concludes by saying that there were three statements, each by a different group of people, one by Joshua, one by Caleb, and one by the other 10 spies. The Torah, on the other hand, just simply says, "We came to the land that you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful." That's all attributed in the Torah to Caleb. And then the spies retort by saying, "They're too much for us. We can't enter the land." So Rabbi Hauptmann, she says that there is a danger with this kind of storytelling. That in this case, the rabbis got something wrong. By adding Joshua's name, they kind of smooth over the storyline, and they give a clearer path to Joshua becoming the necessary successor for Moses. But what they also do is they kind of give a pass to someone who, in the context of the story, doesn't stand up for what is right. And in the retelling of the story, the rabbis, in this case in the Tosefta, insert Joshua into a place where he wasn't present in the telling of the story. When we see things happening in our world today, and we choose to remain silent in the moment, we might feel the inclination later, especially if we think that we were on the right side in our minds, that we can insert ourselves in the story by saying, well, I was a supporter of this because I've always believed that this is the right thing. But if we don't, like Caleb, in the moment of those critical moments in history where we have the ability to stand up for something that's right when the rest of the people in our society are not, that we shouldn't give the people who stayed silent a pass. There's a book that I've read, and I talked a little bit about this past High Holidays, called "The Person We Mean to Be" by Professor Dr. Dolly Chug from New York University. She's a sociology professor and studies, she basically studies about people who think of themselves as one thing, and she calls the people who try to hold or think of themselves as having ideals as being believers. And that in our pursuit of justice in the world, we have to move ourselves and try to influence others who are in this believer camp to becoming what she calls builders, people who are actually on the ground doing the work to make sure that we have a just society for everybody. The people who we have to make sure that the people who see themselves as believers don't feel that it's okay to then insert themselves into the story later, because we need people to be doers. We need people to be builders, to doing the work on the ground, to making sure that as we are in pursuit of a world that is full of justice and equality and safety for all people, that we need people like Caleb and people like Joshua the people who try to make it seem like they participated when in reality they were sitting on the sidelines, those are the people who we need to encourage to do the right thing in the right moment. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue with Aleinu as we rise together on page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vigor aleinu kechol hamonam. V'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, Bayom hahu, Yeh Adonai echad, Ushemo echad. We devote the next few moments of our service to the memories of those who we have loved and lost, holding in our hearts David Cochran, for whom we are in Shloshim, and we also hold in our hearts those for whom this week and this Shabbat are a yahrzeit or an anniversary of their death. Lily Rader, Lily Sugarman, Philip Efron, Morris Rosenfeld, Ross Fetter, Anita Abrams Rovner, Jacob Adler, Arnold Ratner, Pearl Lenora Stark, Rosemary Pearson, and Sylvia Polish. And if there are loved ones you're holding in your hearts in loving memory and would like to include their name for Kaddish on Zoom, please put their name in the chat and I'll read them in a moment. And if there's anyone here who has someone they'd like to mention, please feel free to say their name when I look your way. Nancy Siegel. We say together, Zichronam livracha, may the memories of those who came before us be a blessing. We'll join together in Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayichon uvyom echon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mivarach le'olam ulomei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yithalal, shemei d'kedusha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens on high bring peace to us here on earth, to all Israel and all people of the world, and bring comfort to all those who are mourning. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated. We have a couple of events, things that are happening soon. And the first is a Sisterhood Meeting that's going to happen on June 19th at Joe Thompson's house. So it's going to be from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, June 19th. It's going to be an outdoor gathering together. There will be following CDC guidelines, so we respectfully ask that anybody who comes and is not fully vaccinated to please wear masks and follow social distancing guidelines. And if you want more information about the meeting, it is in our e-news, or you can call the office. Our next book club meeting is going to be on Wednesday, June 23rd at 7:30 p.m. We'll be reading, or we will be discussing The Night in Shanghai by Nicole Monets. In this stunningly researched novel, Nicole Monets not only tells the forgotten story of black musicians in Shanghai jazz age of the 1930s, but also weaves in a historical tale of Jewish refugees and Holocaust heroism little known in the West. These book club meetings have been very fun. This is going to be the last one, I think, until after the high holidays, or at least after the summer. So I hope that you'll join us. Even if you don't get a chance to finish the book, we have some really nice conversations. And that's all I have for right now. We're going to say the blessings over Kiddush and Motzi and our kiddos, and then we'll sing Oseh Shalom and conclude our service. So if you have something to say Kiddush over, we'll join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And, the mask is tickling my nose. For our kiddos, for our children, whether you're sitting next to them or holding them in your hearts, we say, Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May you be blessed like Joseph's children, Ephraim and Menashe. Yesimech Elohim Kisara, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. May you be blessed like the mothers of our people, like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We hope for all of our children that they find the blessing of always being true to themselves and proud of who they are. We wish these words of blessing for all of our kids from the Torah. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always feel close to you, and may you be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. Amen. And for those of you who have something to say motzi over in your own spaces, I know, again, one day I'm going to bring challah to the temple, but I'm excited to have my challah when I get home. But we'll join together in saying motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And we're going to join together in Oseh Shalom, and then I'll unmute everybody on Zoom to say Shabbat Shalom, and we will finish our service. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.